it's an interesting afternoon and an interesting session. We have strong three women from institutions that will share with us a lot of interesting activities that they've been doing. The topic of this session is enhancing the museum experience. So what you will hear today, it will be what's going on inside the museum as well as case studies that they've been doing outside the museum in terms of outreach program. So we have Miss Marina Moore with us, Mom Bongkojpriya Yukon, and Miss Linh Anh Moreau. And basically the topic that we will touch today, it will be National Museum Volunteer Support for Informal Education. And also we will get into details for case studies in children's education, informal and formal. And the last one is meeting challenges in museum programs for children. So they all are very interesting, and I hope you enjoy them. And at the end of the three presentations, we'll start some small discussions or any questions that you might have just to exchange. So I'll hand the floor to the three panelists. Thank you.
Thank you. Maybe we should. So good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I've already been introduced. My name is Linh Anh, and I am the program officer at an organization called Simeo Spafa. I'll say a bit more about myself later, but for now I'll just explain a little bit about Simeo Spafa. We are an intergovernmental organization with 11 member countries in Southeast Asia, with a mandate in education for archaeology and fine arts. So mostly we act as a regional coordinator in organizing educational programs, events, and activities in those fields. And in our work, we also work with museums throughout the region, so including the National Heritage Board and the National Museum of the Philippines. So that's it for Simeo Spafa.
Okay. Thank you. My name is Mom Bongkojpriya Yukon, and I have been in Thailand. I'm originally from the States. I've been in Thailand for the last 50 years. I've worked for over 30 years at International School Bangkok, teaching social studies. And I've been involved very much with the National Museum volunteers. And now I'm on their steering committee. And we've been very fortunate to have made a very lovely association with Simeo Spafa and going to one of their wonderful forums in Indonesia just recently.
Hi, my name is Marina. I've been in Thailand for 4 years this month. My husband works here, so I was just trailing spouse. But before that, we were living in England. I graduated in ancient history and classics and literature as well before that, English literature. And then I went on to work in the graduate school, so I was directing the training programs for PhD students. When I came to Thailand, I joined the NMV, and I then became the president of the organization, which is how I was able to understand the background work to all the activities that we do. So what I'm going to be describing to you is all of what we do, how we enhance the image of the National Museum Bangkok, and how we try to learn for ourselves as well. Okay.
Good afternoon, everyone. And we are talking about enhancing the museum experience. We've heard how a number of museums have been able to put in very, very enthusiastic and inspirational programs. But we were going to talk about organizations that don't have any control over what the museum has. We must work with what exhibits the museum have. We have no control over the museum. And yet at the same time, we think we have the ability, and we've done it, to set up a number of programs that do exactly what is needed. Hands-on, being involved where learning is at its best. And so the title of this is Enhancing the Museum Experience, the same as the title of this section of the conference. And so first, I will as I'm doing, introduce the topic, and Marina will describe what the NMV is first and our organization's educational activities that are directly linked to the National Museum. And then she will also talk about our educational activities that are not directly linked to the museum, but are related and enhance the programs and enhance the learning. At that point, I will take over and I'll talk about how our links outside the museum help enhance and promote our direct programs that we've had. Because we want to promote the learning of and the interest in the history, the culture, the heritage of Thailand and Southeast Asia among foreigners to Thailand and the expatriate community, as well as throughout all of Thailand and as well as in Bangkok.
Okay, so next slide. So very quickly to describe, to explain who are the National Museum volunteers, NMV for short. It was founded in 1969, so we're nearly 50 years old now. And it was formed as a non-profit organization to support the National Museum Bangkok. Kunchira Chongkon, our founder, was the head curator of the museum at the time, and she created a guide training program that would help volunteers lead tours around the museum for foreign tourists. The arrangement was a convenient collaboration because the museum needed the support of volunteers to attract the foreign visitors to the museum, while for the expat community, such as myself, it was a good opportunity to learn from the experts about the history, art, archaeology, and culture of Thailand and the region. So fast forward to the present, and we have approximately 400 NMV members, and about a third of those members are trained volunteer guides. Guiding still remains at the core and inspiration of all our activities. The NMV guides have been there since 1970, so a year after we began. And today we have an international pool of guides who volunteer their time completely for free to offer tours in English, French, German, and Japanese to all interested tourists. I would like to clarify at this stage that we do have some Thai NMV members too, and a number of them have completed the guiding workshop, and some of them are current and active guides at the museum. Some of them are on our committee as well, so that greatly supports us in our collaboration with museum curators and other museum directors, some of whom we've had very close links with. The guided tours at the museum are conducted on 2 mornings per week and offered at no additional cost to all tourists who purchase a museum entry ticket. So we also offer ad hoc tours upon request if people need it beyond those times. So what is the guiding process? And what do we do to get to the point where we can competently and confidently lead a tour around a museum that houses one of the largest artifacts in Southeast Asia? It's nothing as extensive as Miss Lin's collection, but it's quite significant, and it's quite important that tourists are able to better appreciate what's on offer, because sometimes it's a little bit scattered around. So the guide training workshop is an intensive learning experience, and I will explain the process and show how that experience does not only help us as guides, but also leads to other interesting guiding related projects and activities. First, to begin with the planning phase. So there are 4 language workshops: English, French, German, and Japanese, and each has a team responsible for coordinating the workshop and the guides and the guide rota. So we work together at this stage to share ideas and look at ways to improve the program for the following year. We also share the guiding schedule, so each of us knows what the other is learning for that year. And that way, for example, the French guides are able to add things that are significant to them, and the English will say, well, actually last year we did this, that was a little bit different, and then the French or the German group might say, yes, that's a good idea. The Japanese are very academic, so their ideas and their training is something that greatly complements ours as well. So it's that communication. You can see a picture of it here. It's all 4 language guide leaders with the museum curator Kun O, and we're at the museum, and we're planning the workshop for the forthcoming year. This was a couple of years back when I was planning the English guiding workshop. It's very important that our workshops cover the galleries in the museum that are open. To those of you who visited the National Museum Bangkok, it's undergoing extensive renovations. So it's important, if you're planning the workshop, that you take out the galleries that are not relevant for that year, and that you include new exhibitions or new aspects and artifacts into the workshop. So the workshop is not a static one, it's one that's constantly developing. So this is quite an exciting time, because it's after that meeting that takes place that we can start contacting the speakers, thinking about how we want to enhance certain aspects of the training program, and how we can better improve our collaboration with curators and museum directors from across Thailand. So the most important way in which we recruit members is at our annual reception, usually held in September each year. So it's going to be on the 22nd of September. If anyone's here, you're most welcome to join. The annual reception is a prestigious event that is open to all interested members of the community. New members join the National Museum volunteers, and all members renew their membership at this point as well. It is at this event where guests can see that we are supported and promoted by the Fine Arts Department of Thailand. 2 years ago, for example, the guest of honor was the Minister of Culture, His Excellency Kun Wirarot Pochanarat, who presented some of our members with lifetime free access to Fine Arts Department cultural heritage sites and museums. So I got this badge as well, and as a foreign resident in Bangkok, it's quite expensive to go to all these historic sites that we like to learn more about, so this was quite a valuable, it's nice to have a badge, but it's nice to have something that you can use as well. Anyway, it's also at this event that we can explain to members about the guiding workshop. And the majority of NMV members register for the training at this annual reception. All 4 language groups are present, and you can see the English guides have the registration desk. There's the Japanese one, where they all dress up in their traditional clothes, and the French and the German have theirs as well. We also advertise the workshop outside of the annual reception. We advertise it to international schools, targeting interested parents in the expat community. We advertise to foreign consulates and embassies, and we advertise to local women's group and by word of mouth, which is probably one of the most successful ways we get new members onto the program. To give you an idea of numbers, each year we have about 50 members sign up for the English guiding workshop at this event. They drop out, or new ones join during the course of the year before it begins. Other language groups have similar proportional numbers. Each language workshop runs slightly different to the other. The Japanese workshop is the most intensive, as it takes a year to complete, while the French workshop is extremely academic. And because the majority of NMV activities are conducted in English, the French and German groups have to train their guides in the workshop for a longer period within the training program. But for the English guiding workshop, on the other hand, we have a 3-month intensive training program. And after that, there are a number of additional activities and seminars that prospective guides are expected to attend if they wish to become guides. But this is open to all members, with a particular focus on those who want to go on to become guides afterwards. I'll describe these activities later on. So besides focused study of the artifacts in each gallery, the workshop includes lectures on the periods in Thai history. So Mombeti, for example, gives us a very good lecture on the Ratanakosin period and describes her own interesting experience of being married into the Thai royal family, which makes it personal and informative. And this is something that really enhances the guide training experience, because we've got specialist speakers who speak from either a very academic point of view or a very personal account point of view about what we're learning and looking at. We also have lectures on Buddhist cosmology, architecture, art, religion, society, and Thai etiquette. How do you behave when you go to a temple? Why do people make these offerings? Because some of us are in Asia for the first time and we don't know. So this is a good opportunity to explain. And this is why, even though we have 50 people sign up to the workshop, they don't necessarily want to become guides at the end. They just want to get that knowledge and understanding because it's a deeper experience. Kunjarani, who's the director of Kanchana Pisek Museum, for example, she gave us a lecture on mudras, hand gestures. And then she's invited us to her museum, which is in Patumtani, and there we are able to get a more immersive experience of Thai arts and crafts and the minor arts. A crucial aspect of the guiding workshop is the part played by our patron. For example, Kunchai Chakarot, our current patron, helps plan the English guiding workshop program, which I then pass on to the other language guides as well when I was training. He also advises an additional and supplementary training options. He helps with excursions and leads the majority of these excursions himself. Here we can see pictures of him leading excursions and explaining aspects of Thai temple architecture. So he's got two very famous grandfathers, one who was very much into temple design, Prince Narit, who was an artist and a designer of architecture. So to have his grandson help us and explain things to us is something that greatly enhances the workshop. Last year, Kunchai did not just give us a lecture on Thai dance and music, but instead he took us to the National Theatre, arranged for staff and musicians there to show us their instruments. He played for us because he's quite an accomplished player himself. He plays with the Princess Sirinthorn, and he's very passionate about corn and performance. And this first-hand experience, allowing us to see the instruments, explaining the different aspects of the musical orchestra and the different types of orchestra, it's a rare opportunity for expatriate members of the community to better appreciate and understand, which in turn enhances the guiding experience. Similarly, rather than explain Buddhist cosmology to us in a lecture, he led an excursion to Lat Krabang and showed us the giant scroll explaining the Tribhumi Katha to us in a visual format, which made it much easier for us as foreigners to understand and appreciate Buddhist cosmology. So what I want to say with Kunchai is that, yes, he does give us lectures, but what really makes him special is that he's able to take us to places that foreign expatriate community, members of the expatriate community would not normally have access to. And here he's able to arrange, Mombeti has also been able to arrange tours and introductions to palaces where normally tourists are not allowed to go in. So this is something that attracts people to join the workshop and learn. Upon completion of the workshop, and once you've done supplementary training, it is time for the assessment. This is informal, but it's still quite nerve-wracking. To become an English guide, there are two further steps once you've done the training courses and the lectures. First, you have to choose an artifact or architectural feature in the museum. You've got to research it in detail and present it to the rest of your class and other guides. This is called the GGG, or Guides Guide Guides. And in order to prepare for this process, all experienced guides are required to assist and support. So this is how the existing pool of guides are able to help, give you ideas, give you inspiration, tell the new future guides of their experience and what's happened. And what's exciting is that the National Museum Bangkok's always getting new artifacts in, things are changing, pieces that you really like have suddenly moved off to another special exhibition somewhere. So each guide inevitably chooses some piece that you've never really looked at before or thought about before. Also, in preparation for this process, museum curators are contacted and their guidance and advice is sought and gratefully appreciated. Upon completion of this guide training GGG process, prospective guides can then sign up to lead a tour accompanied by an experienced guide. So basically you choose a date, a Wednesday or a Thursday, and one of the senior guides who've been guiding for a while will come with you, and that's when you do your first tour with the tourist, and you obviously explain, I'm a volunteer, but I've been doing the course for a few months now, and you lead the tour, and if you've done it well, and so it's more a case of self-assessment, as not tick boxing and you've passed it and here's your certificate, but you have to show for yourself that you're ready to do this, and once you've done it, you get the badge. And that's a special moment. So once that process is satisfactorily completed, you're able to sign up to your first solo tour where you don't need someone coming in with you. And after that, you get the badge. And the end of the workshop is a time of celebration. We're celebrating our learning, the friendships that we made. Some of my closest friends are people I met on the guiding workshop, and the great honor of being able to guide in the National Museum Bangkok. I think you would agree that for a foreigner in Bangkok, this volunteer opportunity is very special, as it is the result of collaboration with our host nation and Thai nationals in a very unique way. And this leads, in turn, to further learning. That's the guiding workshop section. Now I'm going to just quickly go on to other activities that have inspired this. So besides the training, NMV organizes a number of other activities that stem from the guide training experience in the workshop. So lots of people don't feel confident about leading tours, and they're either self-conscious or they don't have the time, but they are able to sign up to other aspects of NMV training programs that we offer. And one of the more popular ones is the children's program that I will explain in more detail in my next presentation. This is called the Museum Treasure Hunt, and it's led by the NMV Juniors team. So that's about 20 of us, and it's offered in German, French, and English. And it's targeted at primary level international school children. And this game is offered about 10 times a year, depending on demand. Oh no, I'm going to do that in the next one. Another activity that was developed in collaboration with the museum curators is the Touching Thailand program. So this was first introduced to by one of our NMV members whose mother was visually impaired. And I think she came from Australia, and she had seen that there are other international museums that cater to the disabled or have specialist programs for the blind, and this is something that came out of that sort of wish to support her mother, and then the National Museum Bangkok agreed that this was something that would enhance their profile as well. So Touching Thailand is now offered on demand to museum visitors who are blind or partially blind, and it offers these tourists the chance to experience Thailand through the senses. I'm sure you will agree that this is something that would really benefit Thailand, because the touch, the smell, the feel, this is something that's very rich and very available in Thailand, unlike England, which is just plain cold. So, so there's the flowers, and there are herbs and rice and textiles. All of this is part of it, as well as replica artifacts that you're allowed to feel, so sort of wood, stone, all of this sort of enhances that program. And it's quite successful, and the feedback is always positive. This is perhaps the most significant one, and it's maybe you can help me here as well. So for museum curators, are there lots of museum curators here? Hands up, museum, nobody? No, Kunjaradi. Anyway, so the important aspect of the role of being a museum curator, particularly in the National Museum Bangkok, is that they've got to publish research, attend international conferences, guide VIP delegates in English, and this is quite daunting in addition to all the other roles and responsibilities that they have. And effectively preparing for this process is quite time-consuming. So this is how the GET program came about. It's guiding in English training, and it's a program that's been designed to assist and support curators and museum employees to present in English, to guide in English, because how you would guide as a Thai is very different to how you would guide foreign delegates. How do you restrict your tour? How do you plan your timing? Similarly, and this is where I have supported on this program in the past, preparing abstracts for publication, presenting at international conferences. This program's been running for a few years now. Kunjarani was one of the first attendees on this program. And out of that, they became directors of their own regional museums. And they also made this request to the National Museum volunteers. Okay, so this is base level. We've got the basics, but we want support in higher level training and support as well. And out of that, the senior curator training program evolved. And that program as well is based on supporting the senior curators in their publications, catalog publications, research proposals, and how to sort of plan your writing, prepare your writing. And it's done as a program, and it's once a year on average, but it happens in 2 different blocks. And the challenge for this was, again, finding the time for all the curators to be free at the same time, which is why we had to choose 2 days and then a long break and then another 2 days. And during that break period, they've chosen the research that they're interested in. They've supplied us with the papers that they want support in, and NMV members are able to help them with editing, advice on structure, planning, and also if they have any specific concerns with their museums in particular. Okay, moving on to the next. The NMV also supports the museum through our publications, produced in English, French, German, and Japanese. These books are popular with tourists who wish to learn more of the valuable artifacts in the museum. So these are sold at our NMV events, but also in the museum souvenir shop. Next slide. And as a result of our learning and training as guides, a number of NMV members have gone on to become published scholars in their own right. On the screen, you can see John Toomey, who has represented the NMV at a number of international conferences and presented his research on his area of expertise, which is lacquer and Southeast Asian arts and crafts. On the bottom right, you can see one of our past presidents, Fumiko Bowie, who is a Japanese scholar, and she's translated a number of books into Japanese on the topic of the Grand Palace, tea ceremonies, and ceramics. Dawn Rooney is another valued NMV member, and her publications on Sukhothai and Angkor and ceramics are valued and appreciated by all for their research. I'll now move on to the indirect ways in which our educational activities support the National Museum Bangkok. I think this is an aspect that a number of you have asked me to focus on. So I'll describe what we do that helps our non-guiding members to keep up with all their NMV, all that NMV membership has to offer. For example, in order to support and promote this culture of learning, we have a dedicated NMV library in the grounds of the National Museum. A large selection of rare books in all the 4 languages can be accessed here by our members. NMV members are also invited to submit articles in our quarterly publication called Sala, where you can read about art, culture, history, and also our activities. Our excursions program is a further example of learning outside of the museum. Not only do we organize study trips to neighboring countries, last year, for example, we went on a trip to Sikkim and Bhutan, but we also travel extensively around Thailand. The ability to visit archaeological sites, other museums, historic buildings, and temples all help to improve our guiding, but are very popular among our non-guiding NMV members as well. Similarly, the At Homes program is a further, the At Homes program is a further opportunity to visit the homes, galleries, and studios of experts in art, textiles, and design. At Homes are for smaller numbers of members who can register to attend on a first-come, first-served basis, and it offers a hand-on appreciation of whatever the topic is that's being covered. For example, here we can see Madhubani Art Workshop, which is a specialist type of Indian art, and there's a textile studio visit picture there as well. For members who want a deeper learning experience and wish to dig deeper into topics of interest, and it is out of this that we get all the publications and the scholars on the topic, we've got our study groups, and Mombeti is in charge of that. We run approximately 3 study groups per on topics of artistic and historical interest. Mombeti leads the English study groups, but we've also got French and German, plus the Japanese as well. The slide here shows images of an Indian textile study group, while the image on the left is of a Sri Lankan study group, at the end of which we all enjoyed a lovely Sri Lankan meal. Next slide. Last but not least, we have our lectures. The most interesting program within this section is called Chats with Curators, and this is an opportunity for us to learn more about the curators within the National Museum Bangkok or other regional museums, their specialists, their research interests, and there again, it's a small number of members who attend these events, and they talk us through either a special exhibition or a special new piece that's come through. We've also got monthly lectures, the lecture series, which is held once a year, and we've got 8 lectures within that with specialists and scholars who are known in the topic. I'm going to now pass on to Mom Betty, who will complete the rest of this presentation.
Thank you. All right. We also have various links outside of the museum that provide wonderful supplementary education and learning for us in the museum. Our links are with various royalty, other organizations, and academics. And here we have the 3 patrons that we have had in our museum. And the patron job is a very, very important one because it really adds to all kinds of different experiences that our members can go through to understand further Thai history, art, and culture. Our first patron was Tanchai Mamjao Suphatitsakun. He's on the top picture there with the glasses. And he was our patron during the early 1980s until the 1990s. He was a senior prince of the royal family. The second, on the bottom right, was Ajahn Samiti Siripat, he was a student of our first patron, and he led us through the 1990s to about 2007. Though not royal, he was strongly connected with our royal family in their promotion of Thai textiles. Lastly is our present patron on the left, Kunchai Mamrachawong Chakarot Chittapong, who is a nephew also of our first patron. He is a grandson of Prince Narit, who was a talented artist, architect, and writer during the reign of Rama V. Next. Okay, so what does a patron do? All 3 of them were and are top academic scholars in the arts, and it is through them that we have learned the most. Tanchai Supat thoroughly trained our guides in the various periods of Thai art and archaeology. He also did a series of lectures for our members and others on Khmer art, in which he was the foremost expert during his time. Their various publications have become important texts for our studies, such as Tanchai Supat's Art in Thailand, A Brief History. Ajahn Samiti was a foremost expert on textiles, and it was through his work that the Queen Circuit Museum of Textiles began. They also provide a number of cultural experiences, as Marina has explained, that are not available to the general public nor to expats. Excursions to various archaeological sites, the viewing of the Traipum scroll at Lat Prabang, performances at Wang Plainern on Prince Narit Day in late April, and they provide expert advice over the years. Presently, Kunchai Chakarot is leading us through the long process of becoming an association. Every president of the NMV has grown in their positions owing to the support and advice of our patrons. Kunchai has also shared with us his deep understanding of the Kon and the Buddhist cosmology. He's given us tours, lectures, and a number of talks for our guiding workshop lectures. And each year, he brings wonderful cultural presentations to our annual reception held in September, such as this Kon performance featuring Hanuman. And it is because of our links, our association with our patrons, that this has helped further relations with the royal family itself. And most importantly, our patrons, please the next slide. Okay. And most importantly, our patrons have provided invaluable connections with the royal family that has given us the opportunity to view a number of cultural events and ceremonies otherwise not open to the expat participation. For instance, various special exhibitions, such as with Princess Mahachakri Sirinthorn, on the left. Also paying respect at the urn of Princess Pecharat back in 2012. I was the one that arranged that. And HRH Princess Mahachakri Sarinthorn's 60th birthday, as well as our plowing ceremony. Next. And it is through such connections that the NMV became known to the general community, and it was the first organization to receive the Distinguished Thai Heritage Conservation Day Award. This is called the KEM One Anurak Moradok Thai in not only 1989, 2001, 2004, and 2014. It's usually marked on April 2nd, which is the birthday also of HRH Princess Mahachakri Sarinthorn. Next. This has also brought us honor and has allowed us to raise funds for the National Museum for special exhibitions and refurbishment of the various galleries. For instance, in the center on the bottom is the Prehistory Gallery, and in 1987, the NMV, our organization, pledged funding from various sponsors for the redesign and update of this gallery, whose opening coincided with our 20th anniversary. The not pictured there is the entrance hall to the museum, and a gift shop and the ticket office were refurbished, and this was sponsored and funded also by NMV members. And that coincided with the 60th birthday of Her Majesty the Queen in 1993. We also helped provide 25 wooden benches for the various galleries in the museum for those who are tired. And we also helped complete a textile gallery in 2009, which coincided with the NMV's 40th anniversary. We also supply curatorial support on English catalogs. Any English catalogs they wish to produce, we help them with that. Next. We do have links with various other organizations. From left to right, we have our curators and the GET program, which Marina has also described. We've collaborated in producing English catalogs, as mentioned, for special exhibitions in other national museums. We also, in the center, work with several women's organizations. This is the Seroptimist International of Dusit, who do a number of home and garden tours. And our guides have always volunteered to be guides for these home and garden tours that the Seroptimists have done. We also attend Ban Plainern and the Prince Narit Day, and we do guiding at various embassies for tours around their residences on days commemorating the beginning of the diplomatic relations with Thailand, such as Belgium, Portugal, Italy, France, and others. We offer support staff to the Goethe Institute for programs dealing with history and culture, and our other connections include the World Federation Friends of Museums, Siam Society, Alliance Française, the Dante Alighieri Society, the Thai Textile Society, and various international schools, among others. And I'm very happy to say that we've recently now been able to meet and participate in programs with Simeo Spafa. At the end of May this year, we applied to attend a really informative and well-organized workshop in Bali, organized by Simeo Spafa, on whose invitation Marina and I are speaking today. As you know, they are the regional center for archaeology and the fine arts. The workshop was called Hindu Arts in Southeast Asia, and it was under the auspices of the Institute Seni Indonesia. We viewed wonderful dance performances, learned what it was like to play an instrument in a gamelan orchestra. We viewed beautiful modern works of Balinese art. We viewed the lovely ancestral home of Professor I. Wayandibia of ISI and learned the vast variety of Hindu influences and practices in the region. We met so many wonderful people with whom we keep in touch on the line, such as Dr. Krishnan from Singapore. Our participants have shared PowerPoint presentations of the various Indian influences in their respective countries. And this began a wonderful collaboration between Simios Baffa and the NMV. And now Dr. Sam will act as an advisor and resource person for our study group program. Next. This kind of sums up what we feel this whole forum has been about. Tell me and I forget. Teach me and I may remember. Involve me and I learn. And that is been the message of this entire forum. And we feel we are accomplishing that through the many programs that we have, such as the treasure hunt, which Marina is going to explain how it operates. Going to the forum in Bali, touching Thailand, our publications, our guide training. It's not only hands-on, it's hands-on for the guides themselves. They really learn how to do it. And for our study groups, we learn through research all kinds of stuff, that information that we had not known before. For instance, last night I talked to this man from Iran, and we were thinking of setting up a Persian studies study group in which you do the research. And this is hands-on research that you do yourself, that we learn from, and that supplements all of the programs that we have in the National Museum. Next. So I'd like to thank you and the Museum of Siam and the Simios Baffa for the wonderful opportunity to attend this very informative conference. Thank you so much.
Shall I just go straight on to the next one? Okay.
At any point right now, is there any questions from the previous presentation?
I'm just going on into a more in-depth
Otherwise,
description.
Yes.
But before that, do you have anything based on what we've talked about? No.
Okay, then we'll go to the
Let's
next
just go
one.
straight in. Next one. So I'm going to try and do this as fast as I can because I think we've gone over a little bit. So if you want to stop me and ask any questions, we can discuss at the end. This presentation is to give you two examples. One is informal collaboration and how we can learn through informal means, and this is through links with the National Museum Bangkok, as well as formal, where you have the school education curriculum and how NMV presence and NMV input supports and complements that form of training. So I will start with informal education, and that is to introduce and very briefly explain the NMV Children's Treasure Hunt. And then I will describe in a little bit more detail the formal education aspect, because Kun Pichaya said that that was something that was quite interesting to her. And this is an international school that's newly opened in Bangkok, and they had a museum day, and it NMV helped and supported with the success of that event. Okay, so it starts with the problem. NMV guides, a number of us are mums, and I have 2 children myself, and it always starts with, I'm passionate about what I'm doing, I enjoy what I'm doing, but how do I make my children enjoy? How can I make them want to come to the museum and be happy to be there as well, rather than feel that it's boring or that it's a chore or that's something they have to do because they've been made to do it. Also, I'm sure we can all remember from our own childhoods these really boring museum trips where you're just taken in a line and then you've got to sort of look at things behind glass cases, and then you come back home and it's just It's just a day out from school, that's all. I can't really remember much of what we did, except that I know we had to do it. The other problem that a number of NMV guides, we came up with the thought that we don't really know how to prepare our children or the future generation for what's to come. But one thing that is a constant is history, and something that can help and support. All of you are the experts on this subject, but it was something that was very strong for us. We want to do something that's going to help our children to better understand the past and therefore prepare them for their future that we can't predict. Next slide. So this is a number of us, but there are a lot more. And I think something that would definitely describe us is that we know museums are not boring, and we also know that learning is not boring. And it's that knowledge, it's not, we hope it isn't boring, but we know it's not boring. We also know that museums, I think the National Museum Bangkok, it's very hard to get children to engage with the artifacts there. I think Museum Siam is more successful in this way. There are a number of, the keynote speeches that we've had, this is examples of very successful museums. Whereas the National Museum Bangkok, we know it's wonderful. We're not guides because we have to be, we're guides because we love the museum. So how do we get that love across to the future generation? And this is something, we're all volunteers, but we're passionate about the subject. So we thought about it, we planned it, and we created it. To give you, it's not really looking good. So give you an idea of how it all begins on the day. I'm going to just describe the program to you and then go into the planning and the logistics of it. So on the day, the students all turn up. They're aged between 9 and 11 years old. We take a maximum of about 50 at a time. We put them all in this sala to start with. And we explain to them, you don't touch. What is a museum treasure? What is a treasure? It's not a box of gold, it's not chocolates. You do get stickers at the end, which they love to collect. But the main point is that we're looking at pieces that were treasures in the past and that they are treasures in the museum now. And we're going to go on a little treasure hunt looking for pieces that we as NMV guides feel are special. Once we've explained that to them, we break them up into groups, 6 different teams, usually about 8 in each team, and one of the guides takes them to a different piece each. If you just go to the next screen. So these are 3 of our pieces. So each guide will go to a different one, and it sort of goes in a circle movement. So you'll start with one piece, the team then moves on to the next piece, but the guide stays within the same. No, back to that. So each activity, each artifact has a different activity involved. So the Wheel of Law, the children cut out what looks like a sword, but when you open it out, it's this beautiful Dhammachakra. And the children, we explain the concept of Buddhism. We tell them, why is this deer turning his head to listen to the sermon? The value and the importance of Buddhism and the precepts of Buddhism. We then go on to Ganesh. And again, it's not now go to the next piece and someone's there waiting for you. They have to find it, and we give them clues. So we say, go to a god who's got a very strange nose, and if you go straight ahead, you will find him. And so the children lead the tour. We've given them a map, and they come to the god, and there again, we explain stories. So it's all done through storytelling. And then again, another activity, a crossword puzzle with all the key names and activities related to Ganesh. The chariots, which is extremely popular in the National Museum at the moment. This is something that's got the wow factor attached to it. And again, we explain to the children what part the chariots play in royal funeral ceremonies. And they do this very huge jigsaw puzzle, trying to recreate the different parts and pieces of the chariot. Moving on to the next. Originally, what we have there on the top left was a very big Vishnu statue, but that was moved to another gallery where the acoustics were not very good. So very quickly and very last minute, we had to sort of troubleshoot, and we came up with that Vishnu, which half of him is missing. There's no attributes. It's very hard to describe. So there again, we had to change the activity and say, okay, pretend you're archaeologists. And you know now what Ganesh looks like. You know who his father is, Shiva. We've told you that Shiva is, this is how you can describe him. Some of them have already been to Brahma, so they know Brahma's attributes. So when you come to Vishnu, and you're an archaeologist, how do you know that what you're digging up is Vishnu? What are the characteristics you're looking for? Vishnu's on Garuda. Can we see any aspects of that? And this way, children's imagination sort of sparked, and they get very excited about what can you recognize? What are the things? What's that crown? Is it a crown? Is it a hat? And there it goes back to the Touching Thailand activity. We blindfold them, and they have to sort of guess. And that complements the statue, which is sort of not complete. Also, we respond to school requests. So one of the schools said we're focusing on Sukhothai, we're looking at the Ramkhamhaeng Stele. Can you do an activity related to that? And this is something that really excites us, because if we've been doing this 10 times for the year, it gets a little bit boring and repetitive. So when the school says, okay, we want that, not that, we have to come up with a game. We've got to come up with an idea that works around it. And that was how this Sukhothai period was sort of described through this game and this activity. And again, the feedback was great. We've also got the Buddha under a Naga, and there again, it's teaching children mudras. So we asked them to walk around the gallery, look at all the pieces, and think about one of the gestures that they think is interesting. Stand in a row, close your eyes, and choose whichever one you like. And when they open their eyes, each one's chosen a different one. And then you sort of explain, chat, why did you choose this? What does this one mean? And it brings this alive, because they see this everywhere they go. They're going around Thailand, there are shrines, there are spirit houses, and this makes it more meaningful and special to them. The final one is Brahma. And there again, it's this god who's got 4 faces, many arms. What's he holding in each arm? Explain that, describe that to them. Then they leave the room and they walk outside, and we've got a table full of all sorts of things on it, bottles, spoons, cups, and they've got to decide which of those on the table actually are attributes of the god Brahma. And then they sort of stand in that Brahma position, 4 heads, and they make the sort of attributes, and that sort of reminds them. This is one of their favorite for some reason. They really enjoy this one. Okay, next slide. So how is it organized? How is it planned? First is to set up the team. We go for guides who are interested, who are curious. It's not always just mothers. Some of them are grandmothers. Some of them just like being amongst children. The next is to choose the pieces. So the first is the ones that obviously come to mind, the ones that stand out, that all tours include, all tour guides include on their tours. But also you have to think about what's practical. So does the room suit children sitting on the floor? If they're going to be sitting on the floor, are you going to distract from tourists who are going to come in? If you're going to choose a piece, can you find an activity that's actually meaningful to that piece? Can you translate it to the children that makes them better appreciate what they're learning? What's the message you want to bring across? So we've had some guides say, what's this? You're choosing this, and that's not so important compared to this. I prefer you should choose something a little bit more important than that. But we can't, because sometimes it's not practical. The room's not right, the pieces are not right, or it doesn't complement the rest of the activities that they're going to do. So we want a mix of Buddhism, Hinduism, animism, culture, history, heritage. So we've got to incorporate all those elements into the treasures that we choose for each day. Once we've chosen the pieces, we have to write up the script. And this was something that I was assisting with. So you start by telling the story or explaining what the activity is. And then you can see in the red, it's things to watch out for, to make sure that you stress for, as well as the game. Explain the activity to the people, because all of us are volunteers. We're not here forever. And some of us have to go back. I'll be leaving the country at some stage soon. So this script, this text is there, and people can use it each time, because not all of us are free on the day that the tour is organized as well. And that leads me to the boxes and expenses. So each box is for each piece, each treasure. So for example, the chariots, You've got a box with the jigsaw puzzle pieces. You've got stickers, because at the end of each activity, they'll get a sticker to say they've done it. And you've got crayons for some activities. You've got the crossword puzzle. So each piece has its own box. In terms of expenses, we covered costs within the second tour. We charge each student in the school 100 baht. And that more or less, by the end of halfway through the year, we'd covered all the expenses of buying artifacts, buying supplementary pieces, stickers, coloring pencils, and all the rest of it. So we're making quite a large profit from this activity. And it is, if you go to the next slide, it helps with advertising. And there again, we didn't have much time for advertising, but just last year, one of our guides is a PR expert. So she was able to do this lovely brochure. And then another was very good at Excel and communication with schools. So we were able to send it to every single international school in Bangkok. And obviously spreading through word of mouth, telling our children, telling our friends and parents in the schools that where our children are attending, that there is such a activity available in the National Museum Bangkok. And that way we've managed to get a lot of interest. Also, we have to look at a date that fits all the different groups. So there's the team members. We need at least 15 guides on each day. We need the school to be ready on that day, and obviously the museum has to not be having one of their usual massive events where half the museum shut. Or, as is the problem, sometimes they're undergoing renovation, so we have to be careful. Next one. Feedback, thankfully, is very good. All the teachers really like it, and the ones that started with us at the beginning have always come back, so that's always a good sign. Next one. Okay, so now very swiftly moving on to the collaborative work with international schools. This is the school my children go to, Brighton College International, Bangkok. They told us at one of the parent weekly report things, we're going to have a museum day. So I wrote back to them and said, what do you mean? What does that involve? And they said, well, in England, it's very popular. It's a program that's offered to children in the primary school level, so 6 years to 8 years, 5 years to 8 years. And each of them sort of looks at art, looks at history, and creates something. So I said, well, I'm a volunteer guide, and I have links with the National Museum Bangkok, and are you interested? So that was something that they were very pleased about. And so I put them in touch with the museum director, and they arranged for a trip to the National Museum Bangkok. The entire primary school, I think it was 60 children at the time, visited, walked around the National Museum, and the children took pictures of what they liked, what caught their interest. So not much had been explained to them of Thai history or art at that stage. Here they were just looking and engaging with what came out to them. They then went back to the school, if you just go to the next picture, and it was divided up into subjects. So within Brighton College Bangkok, they've got what's called Story of Our Land. And Story of Our Land is where you look at the British curriculum, which is British history. And here they said, okay, we're an international school, so we need to look at the culture of the country that we're in. So we get British history, but we also have Thai history. And not just history, but literature, geography, art, music, dance, and it was all these subjects, a mix of all of these that complements this. So they go back to school, and within their art class, they will create different things. So the 5-year-olds will do a textile project. The 6-year-olds will build a clay temple. The 7-year-olds made a spirit house, and all of this is inspired by that original museum visit. Also, I was able to ask our member, John Toomey, who's got a huge selection of textiles. So the 5-year-olds were in the art room, and then he comes in with this big bag of all these different fabrics. And they had a really nice time. So they look at it, they choose what they like, They're able to touch it, smell it, feel it. John's very good at telling stories. So he's telling them, do you know what this means? And do you know where I got this? And do you know one day I was up in the tribes in the north and then this lady came and gave this to me and this means. So this makes it exciting for the children. And they were asked to take a little aspect of whatever fabric, textile they like, draw it. And if you move to the next one, play around with it, just get excited by what they saw and what they had. If you move to the next slide, and the next one. Okay, so this is to just explain that the head of primary is the one that was sort of initiated this process, but also one of the teachers, the class teacher, the year 1 class teacher, he's lived in Cambodia, he speaks ancient Khmer, he speaks Thai very fluently even though he's English, and it was his communication liaison with me, with the National Museum Bangkok, that actually brought about this program. The next picture, just to give you an idea, once they've done all of this through that half term, so different topics from geography and art and history, dance, music, they advertised a museum day. All parents were invited to come and look at the objects that had been created, and it was very, very well received. I'm just going to quickly show you some of the pictures. If you just go to the next one here, you can see that he'd just drawn a temple. They had to look at Ayutthaya period because it complemented Tudor England. It was the same time, so they're looking at Henry VIII and all the havoc he was wreaking with his 6 wives. And then you're looking at Ayutthaya, what's this kingdom, how is it growing? And then you look at temple structure and design. Next one, there was music on the day. So they've been taught about musical instruments and a little bit about the history of it. And on the day, children get the opportunity to play, have a go at all of this. Next one. They also had flower making and making flower garlands with their parents, which was very exciting for the children and something that you see it everywhere you go in Thailand. It's on all the pavements, but here they're actually learning the process. Next one. These are examples of the temples that they made. But you can see that what really excites them is why do they have stairs leading up? The shape was something that they were really impressed by. How do you get that chedi? How do you get the stupa design? They struggled with that, they wanted to do it, they were excited by it, and the art teacher just gave them lots of time to just create, be imaginative, think of different ways that you want to have it designed. We go to the next picture. And here it is, the parents, next one, engaging with the whole thing, next one. And here is this big giant collage that they've now got at the entrance to the museum, and here it's all the year 4 children, so I think it's 6, 7-year-olds. They each take a little aspect of one of the murals, and then they just draw it themselves, stick it all together, and create this piece of art that they're all very proud of. And the nice thing is that they're able to tell you where it's from, the period, what are they wearing, the textiles that are involved, the dress, the costume of the time, why do people have hair like this? They were able to talk to parents about that, and this is something that parents normally don't want to know about, particularly for myself, yes, but there are lots of parents who don't know about history, who don't appreciate history. Thai parents don't normally want to know. But here it's the majority Thai children were chatting away to their parents, and it was very, very interesting and very inspiring.
Okay, thank you very much. I know it's been a long day and a long 2 days, so I'll try to move as quickly as possible through this. I also didn't know I wasn't going to have control of the PowerPoint, but let's see how we can do. So in my presentation, I'm going to briefly talk about my background. I know that sounds really narcissistic, but I promise you that there's a point. Then I'm going to talk about Simeo Spafa activities in lifelong learning and experiences in partner museums in Southeast Asia. And then I'm going to go through some common challenges in program development, in developing programs for children, and just give some possible solutions to those challenges. And then I will present some results from a survey that I conducted amongst a small group of mothers in Bangkok. So next slide, thank you. This is actually a picture of my family when we moved to Thailand in 1987. My parents were always very interested in cultural heritage. So the house that we lived in was a traditional Thai teak house, Sukhumvit Soi 23, which is still there today. I mean, this is just to show you a bit about how I came to be who I am today. It's my upbringing, what I was exposed to. So for example, those are antiques that my mom collects, and you will see them in the house there. And these are other things in my mom's collection. So this is all over the place. And yeah, this is quite embarrassing, but this was me when I was about, probably 1994 when I was 10. On the left, I'm at Wat Pu in southern Laos. Back then, there was nobody there. And on the right, I'm in the Bayon at Angkor in Cambodia. So my parents really took us to all of these historic sites and all of these archaeological sites. And we were very lucky to have experienced that. But one thing that I wasn't so much interested in, and my parents, yet they still tried, was going to museums. They tried to take me to museums, and I was actually usually quite bored, and my legs felt tired, and it wasn't really a place where I wanted to go. I loved running around these sites and doing stuff like that. But there was a really pivotal moment, I think when I was about 12, when I was going to the French school. There was a French lady who was a National Museum volunteer. And she came to our school and she did a storytelling activity on the life of the Buddha. And she used these illustrations and used these storytelling methods, and it was all very lively, very interactive, and very engaging. And then the next day, she took us to the National Museum, and we had activities. We had to identify some of the parts of the story that we had learned the previous day on the murals of the National Museum, which illustrate the story of the life of the Buddha. So it just, and I can actually, even though that happened so long ago, I can distinctly remember it. And that was a pivotal moment when I started loving museums. So museums and, so next slide, please. Again, and again, and again. So it's, oh, back. So it really had a pivotal role in in how it shaped me as a person, my education and my professional experience. Then I did my BA and MA in History of Art and Archaeology in London. Then I ended up at the Asia Society Texas Center, where I was an art docent. And now I'm very lucky to be working at the CEMEA Regional Center for Archaeology and Fine Arts. So yes, museums, as we know, are places of inspiration, imagination, fun and learning. And as I've shown in my case, it can inspire your career and who you're going to be later. In the humanities, you can decide to become an archaeologist, historian, or an anthropologist. In the arts, you could go on to become an architect, a designer, or a filmmaker. And in sciences, you can also, I mean, one of my friends, he visited a natural science museum when he was a kid and decided he wanted to be a marine biologist. And what is he doing today? He's a marine biologist. And that was all from a visit to a museum. So also part of my background was being an art docent, which is a type of volunteering at the Asia Society in Texas, where I was involved in educational outreach programs. So there were family programs and student programs, and there were also educator programs. So those were like workshops that would teach teachers skills and knowledge about Asian arts to apply in the classroom. And there were also community outreach activities, which were visits to schools. So some of these activities were regularly held, like Family Day and the night market, and the school tours and Young Leaders Institute. And some of them are just one-off yearly events, like the Asia Fest and Explore Asia summer camps. I'll just go through that. That's okay. So there were different types of activities. First, we take them on the tour of the building because studies have shown that if the venue is small enough, if you get them familiar with the space, then they're more opening to absorbing what you're going to say. And then you can follow it up with the tours of the gallery. And the tours of the exhibitions are very children-oriented. So we'd ask them questions, ask them if there's something that they like, and try to get them involved in it. There were also storytelling activities, Asian traditional games, and also very popular were the arts and crafts making. So Chinese and Arabic calligraphy, they particularly liked writing their names in calligraphy. Paper folding, a Filipino volunteer showed them how to make kind of 3D stars of Bethlehem. Those were very, very popular. And there was also drawing and painting and stamping and block printing. So this is during one of the school visits, and even things that can seem challenging, like contemporary art, there are ways that you can, with which you can engage with the children. And I found that a really good way is to ask them questions and to ask them to point to something that they like and comment on something. Maybe what is their favorite color? What do they like about it? It also helps to have them sit down so they can be more open to listening. I mean, it was great working with such a diverse group of students. I mean, you can see the diversity here. And by the end of it, you had African American, Hispanic, white, and Asian students who had, by the end of the tour, had learned how to say hello in a variety of different Asian languages. And even, sorry, back. And it was very inspiring. This little girl, oh, sorry, I don't know how am I? Okay, this little girl at the back over there, she, because I was doing the tours and the arts and crafts activities, she somehow thought I was an artist and mistook me for an artist. And at the end, she said, when I grow up, I want to become an artist just like you. Probably her parents will hate me because she won't become the oil engineer. But it was very touching to hear that nonetheless. And then I started working for CMEO SPAFA, where one of the first activities I participated in was a seminar on museums as centers for lifelong learning, which was held in Hanoi in Vietnam in 2013. For it, we brought together Vietnamese and Southeast Asian museum directors and heads of educational programs. And we asked them to present the lifelong learning activities conducted in their museums and to discuss any challenges in program development and implementation. So at this seminar, the Vietnam Fine Arts Museum shared some of the activities that they did, painting and coloring. And on the right, they're making traditional đồng hồ prints. And at the same museum, here's an activity where they're painting on half-prepared fans and ceramics. And then a different museum, museum called the Vietnamese Women's Museum, which is actually, I think on TripAdvisor is ranked as the #1 attraction in Hanoi. They have a discovery room where they have a variety of activities, like you can try on traditional costumes, and there are also performing arts activities. And there are also activities where they learn about reproductive health. So this just goes to show the variety of activities you can do. It's not just arts and crafts. And here, the same museum, they're making, showing students how to make straw hats, but using newspapers. So this is a way to show how creative you can be with just using what you have. And recycling newspapers. And they go out to the schools and they do this activity as well. And they also have mobile exhibitions to go in remote areas, such as in the Highlands. So you're probably thinking, okay, it's great that these museums do this, but they probably have the money to do this. Asia Society and these museums I've just spoken about. Actually, they have no money. especially Asia Society or the Vietnamese Women's Museum. They are kind of, they function on like an NGO, they're more like NGOs. They're actually NGOs in nature, and they don't receive any government funding. They really have to be creative with what they have. And surprisingly, they're the ones who come up with the most activities and programs, and probably because they have to be, since they have so little funding. So I think it's just interesting to talk about. So for example, if you're having problems with money, with funding, oh, sorry, okay, I just went ahead. So yeah, so there are issues with funding, and another challenge that was identified at the seminar on museums for lifelong learning was human resources. And then they also talked about the lack of ideas, and also in acquiring materials, and also challenges in public outreach, how to reach out to people, how people know about your programs. Next slide, please. So some of the solutions to challenges, for example, like funding, you can reach out to CSR programs and potential sponsors. I know it's kind of difficult to find people to invest in culture, but if it's for an educational program and you use that keyword education, then they're much more open to listening and to donating or funding your activity. You can also put together a fundraising event or devise a fundraising strategy. You can develop a membership scheme that actually works pretty well. You can also apply a small participation fee. And you can rent out the museum as a venue. I know quite a few museums that do that. I believe the National Museum of the Philippines rents out their museum as a venue. And that's a great way to generate funds for your museum. And companies or people would die to have your museum as a venue. It's really prestigious, and it's a really beautiful place to do it. And also, I mean, staff are happy to participate. Staff are happy to participate. They get paid overtime, and everyone's glad to do it. And in terms of human resources, the National Museum volunteers are a great example of finding people who can help out in conducting the children's programs, or even any other program for that matter. And you can also design a program for students, and we have great examples from Singapore and from Taiwan that were shared with us at this event. You can also partner with other museums and schools and universities. And you can also approach, for example, if your staff need training in some area, or you can also approach institutions and companies for help. So for example, if you want them to be trained in digitization, if you need something like that, you can, or if you want your staff to be trained in art therapy or in art education, I'm sure you can approach an institution or a company that can be of help in that regard. And for ideas, I mean, we just got a bunch of ideas from going to this event alone. And you can also tap into the creativity and skills of the museum staff and volunteers that you have. If your staff is working for a museum in the first place, that means they have some kind of interest. So they probably have a bunch of ideas on what you can do for children's programs and any other program for that matter. You can also bring in local artists, craftsmen, performers as activity leaders and demonstrators, and that is very successfully done at the National Museum of the Philippines where they bring in weavers from across the archipelago to show what they do. And you can consult with educators and teachers on how best to communicate this to children, because they're the experts in the field. And there are also so many online resources where you can draw inspiration from. And I mean, even the programs conducted at the National Heritage Board, those are available online. You can download the educators' resources and the resources for children. And you can take some inspiration from that and apply it to your context and to your collections. CMEO has also partnered with the Asia Pacific Center of Education for International Understanding in developing educational materials. So we have these online and available for download. So these include materials in storytelling and in paintings from Southeast Asia and Korea. There are also other resources online. That website will just give you ideas for arts and crafts. There are also, as I mentioned, educational toolkits on other museum websites, so NHB, and also if you go Smithsonian, Metropolitan Museum of Arts, and UK museums, you'll find a bunch of ideas there. You can also just simply go on YouTube or Pinterest. There are a bunch of people making videos of themselves, taking videos of themselves doing some kind of art and craft, and that can be applied to what you're doing in a museum. And then if you don't have materials, there are also things you can do. Just like the Vietnamese Women's Museum, they use the newspapers to make those straw hats, so you can use recyclables like newspapers and bottles and jars. You can also appeal to the CSR departments of art supply companies. A lot of the art supply companies have factories and have bases in Thailand, and they actually do have CSR programs in the field of education. And if you don't ask, then you won't receive. And you can also apply your reasonable participation fee. Now you'll probably say, yeah, well maybe people will not pay a participation fee, but we'll see that later. And you can also consider materials acquisition expenses when you develop a membership program scheme. Also in terms of public outreach, that seems to be an issue as well. You can just go to the schools yourselves and bring objects and bring photos and do the arts and crafts activities there, just like the Vietnamese Women's Museum do. I know some people are going to cringe at this, partnering with malls and organizing small-scale public outreach events in malls. But the reality of the situation is that that is where people spend most of their free time. It's in malls. I mean, I'm talking about the context of Southeast Asia. So if you really want to connect with people, it may be worth looking into partnering with a mall and seeing if you can just do a little small-scale event, have a little booth there, and just to attract people and draw people to what you do in your museum. So I know the Queen Sirikit Textile Museum has done a bit of this and have been successful in doing that. And you can also maximize the use of social media platforms. So the point of all of this is just to encourage all of you to really think about how creative you can be in overcoming these challenges, and all that you can gain from reaching out to the people that already work with you and to colleagues and other museums and other institutions. So the next part of my presentation, I'm going to present the results from a little survey that I conducted amongst a group of 37 mothers residing in Bangkok. That was just a question of, I just had within my reach a group of mothers that I could talk to, and I wanted to see what I could get from them about what they know and what they and their activities in museums. Their background is mostly Thai, British, and other nationalities. So I just wanted to see what they knew about children's programs in museums, and to see whether they attended these. And the purpose was to see how this can contribute to audience development, and to identify any problems or issues in public information, and to see whether there were any volunteering opportunities out there. So most of the mothers in the survey, some of them are full-time parents, but most of them actually work full-time. And most of them work for international organizations or NGOs and are school teachers. So when I asked, do your children attend museum programs, the majority said no. So the question is, why? Next slide, please. I don't know what happened there. So most of them answered that it was lack of public information. They actually didn't know. They actually don't know that museums have children's activities. So there's identifying a problem there with museums in Bangkok. There's also a language barrier which can't be helped, but maybe with the help of museum volunteers such as Mom Betty and Marina, those are things that can be worked around. And if these mothers did know about museum programs, where were these taking place? So obviously the Children's Discovery Museum is somewhere that they know about for children's programs for obvious reasons. Then there's the Science Center for Education, the BACC, and then we have Museum Siam and National Museum. Only 2 people knew about programs in each of those institutions. But they actually do have children's programs, so it's just that people just need to know more about it. What type of activity did your children participate in? Mostly it was arts and crafts and storytelling and children-oriented tours. What is the frequency of the activity? Most of them said, I don't know. So again, it leads us to the same problem again. It's really about public outreach and information. And if you did know about an activity, how did you hear about it? So the most people answered Facebook and advertisements. And then I asked, would you bring your child to a museum program for children? And 100% said yes. If yes, how frequently? So mostly people said once a month, but still quite a few said they would bring them once a week. And which days of the week would you attend? Most of them said Saturday and Sunday, and as we saw from the beginning of the survey, a lot of them are full-time or working full-time, so this actually makes sense. And what type of activity would attract your family to museum programs? The most popular response was arts and crafts, but surprisingly, children-oriented tours was also the most popular answer, and that just shows that they really want to bring their kids there for the educational aspect of it. I mean, the arts and crafts is great, but actually the children-oriented tours got more positive response in storytelling or role play. And then I asked, how would you like to hear about museum programs for children? And it seems that Facebook and printed and online media, such as newsletters or magazines, would be the most effective way to reach them. Then I asked, would you be willing to pay 50 to 300 baht to participate in an activity? All of them said yes. So if you were wondering, oh, but who's going to pay to bring their child to this activity? Well, I mean, these are only 37 respondents, but 100% of them would pay to have their children participate. And then I asked, would you consider becoming a volunteer for museums for children's activities? A lot of them said no because a lot of them work full-time, but we still have a good 10 people who said yes, for sure, and then a bit more who said maybe. And then some of them, I mean, most of them can volunteer once a month, so we have a good pool of people there. And then I asked what kind of activities they'd be willing to volunteer their time to. So, I mean, conclusions from the survey. One thing is that if the funding is an issue, then through this survey, I was able to see that the audience is willing to pay a participation fee. As for issues in public outreach, Facebook and maybe creating museum newsletter and circulating, that would be a good way to get the word out. In terms of human resources, you have very, very willing volunteers. And for ideas, I mean, there are a bunch of ideas that you can get from anywhere, as we saw earlier. So I would just like to end this presentation by saying that you can draw ideas from within your museum, from your people, and from other museums, and adapt them to your own context and to suit your museum's objectives and collections. And you'd be surprised to see how creative and innovative the people within your own museum can be. You can also make use of resources available from other institutions and on the internet, and get the public and children involved in running the programs for a sustainable and expandable model of practice, just like they do at the NMV, like they do in Singapore, and like they do in Taiwan. And another thing that has struck me is that there needs to be more support in having museums involved in the national curriculum, because teachers are generally overworked, and as are students. And so you can make all of these extra educational materials for them to show in the classroom, but will they have time to do it on top of their national curriculum? And I think the presentation from Dr. Tan showed us that working with the Ministry of Education and having these museum activities work together with the national curriculum was really successful. So from all of what we saw today at this event, from Dr. Anna's presentation, Dr. Tan, and Dr. Lin, you can really see that you can really overcome challenges by being creative and having a lot of willpower. And hopefully, your museum can change people's lives just like museums have changed mine. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much for wonderful presentations and also very effective information as well. I'd like to take a moment just to see if you have any questions for the panelists. And please feel free to talk or ask question in Thai, and we can also discuss in 2 languages. And I'm sure we would like your feedback rather than seeing the language as a barrier. Okay, so perhaps it's a long day. And I actually have some questions, actually. Maybe start with Mom Bongkojpriya, please. Could you share with us who are the stakeholders for the National Museum, and in terms of involving or working with patrons, how does that help in terms of generating activities inside the museum?
Not so much that it generates activities, but it enhances the activities you already have, because it brings greater knowledge and greater participation in all kinds of activities that enhance the knowledge that they can bring to guiding and the other activities that we do in the museum. And they have, so this is why we're very beholden to our patrons, because without them we wouldn't have a real entree into Thai society without them.
And I see that the strong concept for the presentations today, it's about meeting the challenge. And also you mentioned about the things that cannot be changed in terms of infrastructure. Can you share with us, like, how can we be creative? What kind of infrastructure that we cannot change, and how we overcome that?
Okay, as I said at the beginning, the museum itself decides on its exhibits and so forth. We have no input on that as such. So we take the exhibits as they are and create what we consider as exciting programs, such as the treasure hunt that involves the students, that involves people, involves the children, involves the guides. And the process, for instance, of the guides making up the script and the ideas for the treasure hunt is an education for the guides, as well as for the children involved. So, and yet there's no change in any of the exhibits. Okay, the exhibit is there. such as the Tamachak. And we have to work around what the museum has, and we create programs that are hands-on and involving, because this is the best way to educate them.
Okay, and perhaps, yes.
Hi. I have a question, but first, let me thank all three presenters for sharing with us today. I would specifically like to comment and congratulate the NMV for a great job and for going beyond what's typically expected of museum volunteers, such as helping out the curators in terms of like with their publications, with coming up with abstracts for conferences and things like that. Recently, I've been asked to also take on the portfolio of volunteer engagement. So I would really like to hear from the MMVs, what is your wish list from the museum that you are volunteering at? It could be in terms of funding, it could be in terms of benefits, in terms of recognition, so that you can actually do your job better. Thank you.
This was something that we had a big debate about, because it's a lot to do with collaboration and partnership. So there is a bit of a, sometimes you can see it as a power struggle. Who's got the say? Because we're leading tours for tourists and guides, and that's bringing in for foreigners, and that's bringing in money. But it's the curators who are there full time, who are doing all the work. But I think through the guiding workshop, where we worked very hard to involve them in the training program. So Kun Charani, Kun O, the program director, Kun Chai, these Kun Chai as well, but the museum staff, we got them on board. And that makes them feel that they're part of the guiding experience. So we are there, but getting them to come round to the fact that it's helping them. So it would be really nice if museum, I mean, one of the most supportive and helpful directors we've got is Kuncharani. And it would be nice if there were more of them who are able to come out to us and say, hey, this is happening. Can you just help us with this? Kuncharani does this quite often. She'll call me and say, exhibition's on tomorrow. I need to get the catalog out. Can you help me with checking the English on this? And it's like, it's 10 p.m. Are you sure you're going to need it? And then she'll say, yes, don't worry. So I'll have a quick look, do it for her, send it, and I don't know how it happens, but the next day it's printed, it's ready, this amazing exhibition opens, and we turn up. I think communication is key. Being involved, understanding what the other person is doing is hugely important, and also not feeling threatened, because in the past, curators, it was not such a big problem, because curators would focus on their Thai. They didn't really care about speaking in English. Research was published by expatriates, by scholars. They just focused on curating. It's changed considerably now. Thai curators can speak in English. They're invited to foreign symposiums. They're expected to publish their research. So our role is not there to do it for them, or to do it instead of them, or to do it in a different way to them. We have to empower them to be able to do it themselves. And that again is, I think, a really useful partnership to sort of encourage and enhance and encourage them to feel that they can ask us, and we're not being dictatorial. We're not telling them this is the way. I have heard from the German, there are lots of volunteers all around the world, museum volunteers, and I've heard from the museum perspective that volunteers are seen as nosy, meddlesome, getting in the way of our progress. We're trying to do our work, and these annoying volunteers are coming and saying, we can tell you how to do it better. What do you know? You are volunteers. You haven't been working in the system. You don't know Thai. You don't know what my job is. You don't know what my pressures are. You don't know that I have to report to so many different bodies. So please back off and stick to your guiding twice a week, and come in when we tell you to come in, and then don't mess about with what we're doing. And I think this is the most damaging, because then you're creating division, and there's no point then. And it's through this opening dialogues, opening the doors, encouraging people. From our part, I think the fact that I am Sri Lankan, that I grew up in Asia, I was able to understand the Thai. You don't want to say you don't know. You don't want to go out and say, please help us. You sort of have a bit of a reserve when you're approaching foreigners, and you don't want to ask them for help, because I understand. I come from Sri Lanka. It was a ex-colony. Why should we go back to the people we told, leave our country, we don't need you anymore? And the Thais, it's a completely different situation. They never needed anyone to come in and tell them what to do. So you have to be respectful of that. And I think mistakes have been made with NMV members who feel they know best, who feel they know more, or who feel just because I can speak English, I can publish in English, that I can go to conferences and have all these people being impressed by what I have to say, that I know more than you. And that attitude immediately puts the curator in a defensive position. Am I right, Kuncharani? And naturally, you're creating barriers yourself. So rather than judge the curators, rather than pass judgment on, can't they learn to be more efficient with their time? Can't they learn to organize their time better? These are things that I've heard volunteers say. Why are they so disorganized? Why are they just not able to just help us when we need help? But we're the ones who need their help. So it's really being a little bit more humble on both sides. Don't accuse, don't judge, don't assume. If the museum staff would understand our pressures, and if we can understand yours, it's a much more productive environment for learning and support. Okay. Did I answer the question? Yes. Yeah.
Hi, I work in museum in Ayutthaya, and we also have volunteer as well. But we so dreaming to have such a structure like you guys has been running with the national museums. But I just want to share my experience on working with volunteers. In our museums, we do a lot of volunteer positions, not really systematic like you have, but the interest of the volunteer or the skill of the volunteer. So, for example, like we have creative volunteer who comes to be in cafe and start drawing with children, and visitor can donate whatever they want to pay to help with the cost of equipment that we provide. So last year we did that heritage weekend, which ended up like 600 people came to the museum in one day, on the weekends. And our activity was so popular. And you know, when you see like education, people often complain that they lack of money. But I also agree with Linz that there are so many things that you can do which you don't really have to use much, but be creative and ask for help, and a lot of people will come to help you. And another guy next door, he can play music, so he came with the guitar and play music in the museum and to volunteer and just on the weekend just to entertain our museum visitor or sing along, or you know, it's become other dimension, have at other activity or engagement in different levels. And so this my question is that do you have plans, like what's next for you? Would you adopt this idea to help other national museum in the regions, or Museum Siam, or BACC, or somewhere else?
Absolutely. It is something. It is something that we've been offering to do for a while now. Kunjarani, who's the director at Kanchana Pisek, but she's also overseeing Patumtani storage. So there's this cataloging project that she's asked us to assist with that's still being worked out and planning. It's in the planning phases. But anyone, so Bangshiang Museum up in the north, when they needed help with their special exhibition, writing catalogs, writing information booklets, brochures, if you need help with translation. There are a number of things we can help with. The year I was president, we offered another problem with the National Museum Bangkok is they don't have a publicity team. They don't have a marketing team. It's all done by the curators. So what I was saying is we've got a publicity team. We've got experienced members. They might not be guides, but they know how to organize publicity. I'm not a Facebook person, but there are people who are. We can help you. We can put, so you link your stuff onto our page, we link onto your page. And this is how we can sort of expand and help. And I think by doing that, we're helping everybody. And we're increasing awareness about museums, not just National Museum Bangkok, but anywhere in the region, so for sure. Absolutely. Yeah.
It's okay. I'm Jaruni. Marina referred many times in her presentation. I have no question, but I just confirm some activity that we done together with the National Museum volunteer. Not only the Marina, you know, but the same thing that in my heart at that time. That's why I asked you to help me, to help museums, to like to collect the caption for the special exhibition. At that time, I think you are our friend. You are a friend of museums. Nothing to concern about the budget, about the other advantage that you can take from me. But one thing that I have to tell you that I can contact others member of NMV. At that time, I think everyone can would like to help me as same you. But at that time, sometimes that emergency case, you know, that's why I chose you, because something, you know, we are that I can touch. We are we have the same heart, you know, to be would like to explanation about Thai culture. I also have to thank you very much, because you also help us to explain to the foreigners, because as you will notice that my English for Thai people, you know, but how can I explain about Thai culture to foreigners? I think the foreigners should be know the foreigner more than us, right?
But on that point, how do we explain Thai culture and heritage to foreigners? It's from our point of view. And this is why it's really important. On the workshop, you have Thais there to explain it to us first. And that way, when we're explaining it to foreigners, we're not making it up from what we know and what our experience is, but we're explaining it from first-hand sources. We're explaining it from curators and students and people who know what they're talking about. And that is another huge bonus to working closer together. And that's why I'd really advocate for this open door communication policy between the two, and not feel that it's another constraint on your long list of things to do to have to start forging relations. It's easy. Just call and do it. And if I can't do it, I'll call a friend and they'll do it. And that's how it works. And it gets done because volunteers, by definition, are happy to do the job that they've been asked to do. Otherwise, they're not going to do it. We're not paid. So if we don't want to do it, we'll pass it on. But it can get done. And I think that's a huge message to take out of today.
Okay, we have a little bit more time. Any more questions? Well, maybe one last question for Lynn. Since your presentation is sort of broad and more of a Southeast Asia scope, could you share in terms of the museum activities and or volunteer activities in like Hanoi or in Indonesia you spoke about?
Well, we're our work with museums is really just in its beginning phase. We really started bringing the museums together in 2012 when we had our first Southeast Asian Museums Forum, and we had the second one in 2014 in Yogyakarta. So now the next phase forward is to really create a network of Southeast Asian museums where we can share our experiences in through staff exchange, knowledge sharing, volunteering, and really what the other museums are doing. So far it's just been at a meeting level, but we really are looking to take it a few steps further, and that's also a part of our new 5-year development plan at CMEO SPAFA to really move the plans forward for regional cooperation in museums. So for now, beginning stages, but hopefully much more to come in the future.
Thank you. So today it's a wonderful 3 presentations. We never know that there's so many activities going on inside the National Museum, and it's such a mind-blowing experience. Basically today we experienced a lot of docents activities, very comprehensive, and we can see that how you involve all these educational programs around this docent program, which is a very strategic thinking as well in terms of human resource. And also the study group, the excursion trip, and at-home programs. And what a wonderful thing about the touching Thailand. It also not only educational but also tourism in another level as well. So it's really impressive presentation and how National Museum and NMV work in collaboration, supporting each other. And also presentation from Lynn, it's so in-depth in terms of the meeting challenge and also the creative solution. I find that it's very constructive presentations, and the survey at the end, it opened our eyes on what we lack. Yeah, and I mean our weakness. I mean, I'm from BACC, and it's the same challenge as well in terms of the public announcement, public information. So we ended the note with the collaboration among museums in the region, and especially in Thailand. We like to see that in the future, whether it's a volunteer program or any other museum educational program. So I like to end the session by thank you all these 3 panelists. Please give them a warm applause.
Thank you very much to you too, Kumpi.
And also please, we are having a closing ceremony right at the moment. So you can join everyone at the conference room, the big conference room. Thank you.